last several weeks, last few months, the kinds of epic changes and events in our country that are as profound as anything that I've seen in my lifetime. And I'm now a lot older than planned. I'm going to be 59 soon. And let me begin by acknowledging that although all of us have been feeling pain, uncertainty, disruption, some folks have been feeling it more than others. Most of all, the pain that's been experienced by the families of George and Brianna and Ahmad and Tony and Sean and too many others to mention, those that we thought about during that moment of silence. And to those families who've been directly affected by tragedy, please know that Michelle and I and the nation grieve with you, hold you in our prayers. We're committed to the fight of creating a more just nation in memory of your sons and daughters. And we can't forget that even as we're confronting the particular acts of violence that led to those losses, our nation and the world is still in the midst of a global pandemic that's exposed the vulnerabilities of our healthcare system, but also the disparate treatment and, as a consequence, the disparate impact that exists in our healthcare system, the unequal investment, the biases that have led to a disproportionate number of infections and loss of life in communities of color. So in a lot of ways, what has happened over the last several weeks is challenges and structural problems here in the United States have been thrown into high relief. They're the outcomes not just of the immediate moments in time, but they're the result of a long history of slavery and Jim Crow and redlining and institutionalized racism that too often have been the plague, this original sin of our society. And in some ways, as tragic as these past few weeks have been, as difficult and scary and uncertain as they've been, they've also been an incredible opportunity for people to be awakened to some of these underlying trends. And they offer an opportunity for us to all work together to tackle them, to take them on, to change America and make it live up to its highest ideals. And part of what's made me so hopeful is the fact that so many young people have been galvanized and activated and motivated and mobilized. Because historically, so much of the progress that we've made in our society has been because of young people. Dr. King was a young man when he got involved. Cesar Chavez was a young man. Malcolm X was a young man. The leaders of the feminist movement were young people. Leaders of union movements were young people. The leaders of the environmental movement in this country and the movement to make sure that the LGBT community finally had a voice and was represented were young people. And so when sometimes I feel despair, I just see what's happening with young people all across the country and the talent and the voice and the sophistication that they're displaying. And it makes me feel optimistic. It makes me feel as if, this country is going to get better. Now, I want to speak directly to the young men and women of color in this country.
All right. So, sorry about that. That was the worst segue ever. Welcome, everybody, to How the Frack We Got Here. Today's date is June the 6th of 2020. And yes, we are still in the 5th level of Jumanji for all those that are paying attention. Welcome, everybody, to How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, most Will Buchanan. On How the Frack We Got Here, we do take the events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. Before I do get started, this is an adult podcast, which means that things with adult language will be used and things of a graphic nature may be shown, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. Before I get started, guys, it was the only way I could actually start this off was, of course, the Avengers theme, which I give credit to the person. I don't know who did that, but honestly, it was awesome. And I wanted to share that just because, number one, I'm a Marvel fan, and I love Avengers Endgame, especially the portal scene where everybody comes together, which was actually done properly, but that's neither here nor there. But to apply it now in our social climate is awesome. And the thing about it is, even though, you saw Labelist, and you gotta understand, I was telling somebody yesterday, before I do get into the stories, you realize we have Amish people and Wiccans and witches against Dorito. Do you know how pissed off you have to make Amish people leave their settlements to come and protest you? I mean, it's Amish people. They have renounced electricity. They have renounced electricity. They have renounced anything modern, but will still come out the woodwork to protest you. Do you know how much you have to piss off a witch? I mean, respect to the wicked nation out there. But again, do you know how much you have to piss off a witch for a witch to come protest? I'm just saying that's quite the amount. You just don't get away with the simple fact of the matter of, oh well, the witches be witches. No, witches and Amish people are just as pissed off about Dorito as we are. That alone should tell you something. But actually, there are some as fucked up as this week was, there actually are some good points, and I'm gonna start. Usually I start with good news. I usually do good news at the end, but in this case, I'm gonna go ahead and start with a little bit of good news up front. Mainly being the DC mayor, Bowser, has done this, where they have basically made 1600, Pennsylvania Avenue, all the way up to the White House, literally with Black Lives Matter painted on the street. Even more so that the DC mayor has had the street changed to Black Lives Matter. So, if anybody looks up the address of the White House right now, and I mean right now, it literally will sit there and say, all Black Lives Matter Street. That is the official address of the White House. And I don't know about you, but Mayor Bowser, I have to give them credit, because if there was one big ass way that you want to say fuck you to Dorito, that is genius. Because he can't do shit about it. And I think that was pretty cool. So that part alone to me is just funny as hell. That did put a little chuckle, little spark in my soul. But you know what else put a spark in my soul? The Rock. And I know for a lot of you women out there who are Rock fans, I understand. The Rock is a big dude. He's Samoan, and he's tattooed. I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm not as big as The Rock, but I wish I had that full tattoo. But I'm not Samoan. I'm not trying to disrespect shit. So, but I am getting a tattoo eventually. But I love the fact of what The Rock said in his Instagram. And for all those that haven't seen it, this is what it says.
Where are you? Where is our leader? Where are you? Where is our leader at this time? At this time when our country is down on its knees, begging, pleading, hurt, angry, frustrated, in pain, begging and pleading with its arms out, just wanting to be heard, begging and pleading and praying for change. Where are you? Where is our compassionate leader who's going to step up to our country, who's down on its knees and extend a hand and say, you stand up. Stand up with me. Stand up with me because I got you. I got you. I got you. I hear you. I'm listening to you. And you have my word that I'm going to do everything in my power and until my dying day, my last breath, to do everything I can to create the change that is needed to normalize equality because Black lives matter. Where are you? It's that same compassionate leader who has to come back and readdress the country, to give important context, to give important perspective on the comments that were just made. Of course, all lives matter. Every single one. All lives matter because we, as Americans, we believe in inclusivity. We believe in acceptance. We believe in human rights. We believe in equality for all. That's what we believe in. So of course, all lives matter. But in this moment right now, this defining, pivotal, explosive moment where our country is down on its knees, the floorboards of our country are becoming unhinged. In this moment, we must say the words, Black lives matter. Where are you? Where are you? Because here's what happens. When you extend a hand and you reach out to Americans who are in pain. And they stand with you. They stand with you. Here's what happens. The entire country stands and rises as well. There is military force that has been deployed on our own people. Looters, yes. Criminals, absolutely. But our protesters who are begging and pleading, our protesters who are in pain, you know, you would be surprised how people in pain would respond when you say to them, I care about you. When you say to them, I'm listening to you. You'd be surprised how people would respond, how Americans would respond. If you say to them, I care about you, I am listening to you. This is our country. You are all my people. And I take full responsibility and full accountability for something that has been hundreds of years of systemic disease. Why am I taking full accountability? Because I am your leader. I'm your leader, and I'm going to do everything I can to make this right. And I'll tell you what, you give me some trust, you give me some time, you give me some effort, you give me some love. I'm right there with you, and together we're going to make this right. Together we're going to create that change. Together, we're going to normalize equality. We're going to do it, but we're going to do it together. You'd be surprised how Americans and how human beings would respond. They would rise up with you. We would rise up with you. The world would rise up with you. I want to take a moment to thank the world. I want to take a moment right now to thank the world for standing up with us in our fight for equality, to normalize equality. I want to thank all these countries around the world. Incredible, inspiring, beautiful displays of solidarity. And I want you to know something. And I feel confident speaking on behalf of your American brothers and sisters, us, through our fire, through our smoke, through our debris, through our noise, and everything that we're going through right now, because there's a lot happening around us as we're taking our lumps. Don't think for a second that we don't see you. We see you. We see you. We thank you. We love you. Look, I am like the majority of Americans. I'm not a politician, and I've never clearly been elected to office, and I am not the president of the United States. But I am a man and I am a father who cares so deeply about my family, about my children, and the world that they will live in. I care so deeply about our country and every single person in it. That's who I am. I am a man who is frustrated. I'm disappointed. I'm angry. But I'm also doing my best to stay focused and as calm as I could possibly be in the pocket to make the best decisions for my family and make the best decisions for our country. So as we continue to wait for that leader to emerge, as we continue to wait for that leader to emerge, I would recommend to all of you that we must become the leaders we're looking for. We become our own leaders because we're doing it now. We're doing it now. We must become the leaders we are looking for. And I'll ask it one more time. Where are you? Where is that compassionate leader who steps up and takes accountability for his country and all of the people in our country? Where are you? Because I'll tell you what, we're here. We're all here. We are all here. We're all here. And the process to change has already begun. The process to change has already begun. You can feel it. You can feel it. You can feel it. You can feel it across our country. Change is happening. It's going to take time. We're going to get beat up. We're going to take our lumps. It's going to be blood. But the process of change has already begun. You guys stay strong. We got this.
I'm The Rock, and I'm running for 2020. At this point, you might as well. Now, I wanted to show that, guys, in its full entirety just because, again, it is amazing where we find leadership in the void of what's missing right now. And it is amazing to me that you have people like The Rock, you have former president, well, I still call him my president, I'm sorry, you could take however you feel, but President Obama, even, I didn't go through his is 14 minutes, and trust me, I didn't want to go that far, because let's be honest, I'll be watching right along with y'all. I forget I got a podcast to do. But even he pointed out some key things about the lack of leadership, and that's always been, among many things, Doritos' main problems. It's the simple fact of the matter is he's not a leader. He's a troller. He's a watcher. He is a guy that will take credit for the smallest things, even though they have nothing to do with them. So I love the fact of how The Rock started with, where is our leader? Because we are missing one. So, like I said, The Rock for 2020 or at least for 2024. One of the two things is going to happen. That man, the way he's talking, is going to run for office. That's all I'm saying. But moving right along, guys, there has been some news in the George Floyd murder case, and I call it a murder because it was a murder. Let's get that part right. Involving the 4 officers, in which the news was actually broken to Mr. Floyd's son in this video.
Because nobody's going to know George Floyd better than his own son.
I'm here with my family. We demand justice. My father should have been killed like this. We want justice.
Plain and simple.
Plain and simple.
Justice. Benjamin, let me ask you about, and I see you holding Quincy there.
It's very emotional. It's very emotional for Quincy and all of his children and all of his family. I mean, to have all of this thrust upon you, to witness this tragic killing of his father, and I don't want to get into the details because I don't want to put him through any further emotional agony than he's already doing, but it was a horrific death on top of losing your father.
I can't imagine, and really, we are so deeply troubled and sorry for what you have been through. Benjamin, there are new details now coming out about the 3 officers and Derek Chauvin, the person with his knee down on Mr. Floyd's neck. He is being charged now in court documents with second-degree murder, and I'm sorry you have to keep hearing that over and over and over again. He's being charged with second-degree murder, so they have lifted the charge, made it higher, and they have now, as I understand it from our Josh Campbell, charged the other 3 officers in this case. Tell me what you are hearing and what you think about the charges that have now been meted out on these 4 officers here.
Well, the family has always maintained that all 4 of the officers should be arrested for this horrific killing of Quincy's father. The charges against the officers, we believe, should be an aiding and abetting charge to the murder, or it should be a felony murder of some type, because we know if you cooperate or participate in the commission of a crime, then you can be held accountable for that crime as well. They do it to minorities all the time. And so we want equal justice in America. And Officer Chauvin, we believe it should be first-degree murder. We are relieved that they have been upgraded to second-degree murder, but the Attorney General has informed the family the investigation is ongoing, and if there's evidence to support a first-degree murder conviction, they will charge it. And so the family is relieved that Attorney General Keith Ellison, who has a track record for championing civil rights, has moved expeditiously in arresting these officers before we memorialize George Floyd tomorrow.
Okay, so pretty much in that video, of course, they said CNN, of course, you can see it on the ticker, that all 4 officers are, the main officer, Derek Chauvin, the one with the knee on Mr. Floyd's neck, is actually being charged second-degree murder, aside from the third-degree murder that was initially charged. The other 3 officers are actually being charged with aiding and abetting second-degree murder. Okay. So for all those that it might not be lawyer inclined, as he talked about, he says yes, but that means that they should, Derek Chauvin should be getting first-degree murder. For all those that have never watched Law and Order or never watched NYPD Blue or any other cop show out there, first-degree murder is premeditated, which means that you had to go out there with the intention of killing said person. That's how you get first degree. Second degree is basically murder without the premeditated intention. Of course, third degree is basically in the act of assault, which actually led to someone's death. So, why is that important? It is important because first-degree murder can actually get either life or death penalty. Second-degree murder can be punishable up to 40 years in prison. Aiding and abetting and manslaughter, which is what they pretty much gave the other guys, could be punishable up to 10 to 20 years in prison. So there is a big ass difference on the murder charges. And I'm going to be honest, as the lawyer sat there and said, well, he should be on first degree murder, it's difficult to prove that. Because I actually took it upon myself to talk with some local prosecutors in my state of Tennessee. And I wanted to ask, I said, because I asked them about the Derek Chauvin case, and I said, how hard is it more difficulty in trying to prove charges of first degree murder or prove charges of second degree murder in the case? And from everybody that I talked to, they sat there and said, first degree is possible, but it's more difficult just because of the situation. You have to prove that a cop woke up that day and decided that he is going to kill this specific black man to a jury and sit there and say he had intent from Jump Street that he wanted to go and do this, versus second degree murder where he literally had the intent at that moment to kill that man. So from my understanding, yes, I would love to see the man hit. I would love to see first degree charges be pulled up on Derek Chauvin. It's just, let's be completely and clearly honest. It is going to be more difficult to prove first degree murder on a cop in a court case over a black man than it is with all the evidence in the world that you can prove second degree murder on them and still get them. Because let's be honest, at this point, he's not walking. Derek Chauvin is not walking. Just like Andrea Gray, even though her sentence was shitty in the murder of Botham Jean, they're not getting away. Even more so, between all four cops, they're actually starting to show signs of turning on each other, as it was reported in this article here.
With aiding and abetting second-degree murder in the death of George Floyd. And we're also getting a sense of what their defense strategy might be, at least for two of them. And that is apparently shifting the blame to the senior officer, Derek Chauvin. Now, this was a very surreal moment to be here behind us in the courtroom. I was here with our producer, Aaron Cooper, and I say surreal because these officers who worked for the criminal justice system are now being prosecuted by that same system for alleged crimes. Now, inside court yesterday, there were 3 separate hearings. The defendants were brought in wearing orange prison uniforms. They had members of their family in the audience. And the state's assistant attorney general began by saying that this is a very serious matter involving a very tragic death, and these are very serious charges. Now, the state asked for a very high bail, that obviously countered by defense counsel, and we got a sense of that strategy of these officers because one of the attorneys for former Officer King pointed out that as this encounter happened with George Floyd, his client turned to Derek Chauvin and said, "We can't do this." Now, an attorney for Officer Lane similarly used that type of thinking, pointing out that his client had only been on his 3rd shift, so very junior. Now, I caught up with that same attorney outside court, and what I tried to do was get a sense of what is this strategy you're trying to put forward? Because while we were in court, that attorney actually said, what is my client supposed to do but to follow what the training officer said? So what I wanted to know was, are you saying that your client was simply following orders, which as we know is an excuse that often raises eyebrows? The attorney got very heated. As it turns out, defense attorneys who get paid to ask tough questions sometimes don't like answering them. Here's how that exchange went. Claim that he was following orders, your client?
No, I'm not claiming he was following orders. I'm claiming that he thought what he was doing was right because he asked the training officer, should we roll him over twice? You got to have criminal intent for second-degree murder. And frankly, this bull.
Now, itself is interesting and also funny. Because as you can see, they all starting to turn on each other. And I do mean starting to turn. Even so much so that the other officers are now sitting there pointing to Chauvin as he was a senior officer and now trying to insert, oh, well, this happened. Or, I was just following orders. Or, why didn't we, I asked, could we turn him over? He was handcuffed. He wasn't going anywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, what you are seeing now is entering context to basically save their skins. At this point, I'm not going to be surprised if the prosecutor is going to start along the ways of, either, I mean, I hope he wouldn't offer deals. I hope he gets all of them. But at this point, it is looking as if the others are now trying to paint this picture as if they were following orders. One was barely a rookie with a training officer, and I'm not. And it amazes me so at that point is how in the world can we sit there and say that at this point it was more than what it should be, and now we're all starting to see it. Now, don't get me wrong, black people have known about police brutality way since the early 1800s. We've known about police brutality, but it's now gotten to a level where a lot of people are now involved. It's getting to the point now where you can't ignore it. We are growing in numbers on a daily basis, and law enforcement should be concerned not only about that, but the simple fact of the matter is also for law enforcement who believe that they have to leave because of stuff like this.
He's out of his ear. He's bleeding out of his ear. Get him medic. What the f*** you walking up on me? I'm on the ground.
This is what I sit there and say about some officers who have certain jobs. For the simple fact of the matter is, you just saw officers shove a 75-year-old. We didn't know his age till later, but you saw him shove an old. You saw 3 officers shove an old man, and he hit his head on the ground. That is blood on the ground, and 2 of them kept walking. 2 of them kept walking. One guy was about to turn around and actually check on him. You see the officer behind him, like, nope, keep going. And it amazes me so that not only did this, of course, the officers did get suspended without pay, but the entire thing about it is that 57 police officers have resigned from this ERT or emergency response team, kind of like the riot police that you actually see out there. But the simple fact of the matter is, 57 of them are resigning from the emergency unit, but they're not resigning from the force in response to what happened to the 2 officers that have been notating the video as literally shoving the older person to the ground and he's bleeding. Now, in my mind, if 57 officers resign because 2 officers did something stupid, then in my mind, you don't need to be on the force. If you're resigning because you're in protest, then at that point you don't need to be a cop. If you are literally erring on the side of law enforcement officers who, excuse me, who, for lack of better words, went above and beyond what they're needing to do. They went to the extreme route. And you, being a part of the police, want to sit there and say, yes, I'm going to resign from the ERT because my fellow officers were judged harshly. So I'm going to resign from that and still be a cop. No, you don't need to be a cop at all. If that alone bothered you, I don't even want to imagine what happens when you get out in the public with those other protesters. I don't even want to imagine, because if you're resigning because you believe your fellow officers got the short end of the stick, please, oh please, for the love of the entire state that you're in, don't be a cop. Because the last thing I want is somebody with a gun and a badge and a sense of qualified immunity to turn around and sit there and say, yes, I'm going to do whatever I want because I'm a cop. No, I don't want you nowhere near us. And for all those that wonder what I say about qualified immunity, it seems to be this assumed sense that law enforcement, and there's many documentation on this, where law enforcement can, look at the evidence, look at the video before they give statements. They can sit there and say, what they say versus what actually happened. And it's amazing how, without the use of body cams and social media, everybody recording, that it would be taken as gospel. There's a qualified immunity out there that really, really needs to be shot down. Or in my case, like these body cams, officers. The one thing I hate about these body cams, really for the simple fact of the matter with these body cams, the one thing I always hated is that law enforcement officers can turn them off. I believe that law enforcement officers should not have the ability to affect body cams. If a body cam stops working, or is forcefully tried to turn off, or anything of that nature, that officer is then charged with destruction of property and destruction of evidence. Every arrest that they've done will come into question. Every traffic stop they've done will come into question. And even then, they should be put forward toward a review board of a community oversight to see whether or not he is fit for duty. I guarantee if body cams, along with, of course, y'all probably seen this meme on Facebook where it sat there and says, you want to stop police brutality, have them pay the victims out of the police pension fund and watch how quickly it stops. And I agree. Even more so, where I've always told people, there is a level that cops should be accounted to, especially when you see stuff like this.
Get up. Get up. Stupid.
What led to that moment when the video shows you being slammed to the ground?
Well, first we were at the Centennial protest, and then we went to the second protest at Lennox. I saw that there is something that I didn't agree with, so me and my fiance was headed home, and I removed the barricade, and I get back in the car, and all of a sudden I just see hands out my window trying to snatches me out, and pretty much slams me down. We weren't a part of any of the looting or anything. We were peacefully protesting, and once that wasn't there, we pretty much, was headed home. I'm actually a dental hygienist. I have my bachelor's degree in dental hygiene. As you know, we need our hands. You need your shoulders. You need your back. You need your stomach. You need everything. And the fact that, that was taken from me after I earned it, it's very life-changing and an eye-opener.
Okay, so I stopped it right there because this is a prime example of what I've been saying. Because this is the officer statement. The woman refused the officer's orders to exit the vehicle. He attempted to get her out of the car, and the two struggled. During her effort to resist arrest, the officer had to force her to the ground to get her in handcuffs. Folks, y'all saw the video. And I love the fact of where the police officer says, during her effort to resist the arrest, the officer had to force her to the ground to get her in handcuffs. The officer had to force somebody onto the ground to get them in handcuffs, and the body cam shows them rolling up on them without issuing any commands. Let's call that bullshit. And that's why I'm saying that, officers, about body cams and things of that nature, like, don't get me wrong, I still think body cams are a great idea. But again, body cams you think for police officers would work out great in their favor. But the thing about the situation is they can sit there and paint this picture of a hostile or unruly suspect to justify their actions, and it's fucking wrong. Even in that case, from the video from a young lady in Atlanta I just showed, it's fucking wrong because the officer knows they're fucking wrong, but they have to paint it to where their extreme actions are justified, and yet they wonder why we have issues trusting the police. What you guys say, Kelly? If you are a police officer, and stand silent while your police brothers do wrong, you are just as guilty. Hold your officers accountable for their actions. Call them out and say this is wrong. Yeah. I always go back to Pete Rosenberg. Pete Rosenberg of Ebro in the Morning said this to a law enforcement officer, and to this day, I still say the same thing. You guys say there are good officers and there are bad officers. Okay, well, do us a favor in the community. If you would go out and you would constantly point out the bad officers, if you would point them out, if you would call them out, if you would do so on a consistent basis, then we would be behind you. Then we would back you. Then we would do all of this to actually assist you. Because from our side of it is, when you're silent, you are just as guilty as them. When you know you have some brethren on law enforcement who will do erroneous shit, but you won't call them out on it, you might as well be just as fucking guilty. And he told law enforcement officers down the phone, complete silence. Because we all know, the law, cops are the biggest gang in America. I may not like a lot of things Tupac said, but he got that part. He got that part right. Cops is the biggest gang in America. Because they'll never speak on their own, and if they do, which some have done in the past, they've either been fired, pariahed, or mysteriously disappeared, or mysteriously resigned, however you take it. But again, the fact remains, we can't trust police because police will be silent their goddamn selves. It's almost like it is worse than a marriage with domestic violence, especially when you know the aggressor and you and the aggressor are wearing a badge and you still will say nothing. That alone speaks volumes. Oh, more than Alex, the two cops have now been charged second-degree assault. Oh, okay. So they've been charged second-degree assault along with the charges. Ooh, yeah, they're trying to go for 40, 50 years, which I don't blame them for. I'd do the same damn thing. Now, moving right along, guys, with that being said, there is some good notes that are coming out of the city of Minneapolis where this has happened, and I just want to share this because I think that this might lead to some strides with what the city is doing.
For the city of Minneapolis have agreed with the state to ban the use of chokeholds by police and to require police to report and intervene any time they see an unauthorized use of force by another officer. Those laws about other officers being held accountable if they don't intervene are something that I think you're going to start to see a lot of police, a lot of local governments.
Okay, so pretty much the city of Minneapolis, you guys said the A. Minneapolis have decided that, yes, we are going to ban all chokeholds by police. Even more so is that they are actually empowering individuals to actually record and notate on police actions. In other words, they're basically empowering all Minneapolis citizens to watch out and record and document what the police do. Now, again, if you are doing your job, then this shouldn't be a problem. It just depends on, again, if it goes back to the whole thing, if you're a good cop or a bad cop. And if you're a bad cop, this news sucks. But if you're a good cop, you have nothing to worry about. As y'all keep telling us, we follow commands, and we all know that's bullshit. So, again, I do like the fact that some strides are being taken. Even more so in another case with Ahmaud Arbery. Again, this is looking more and more like the murder charge it is, especially when you hear disturbing shit like this.
It's been 3.5 months since Ahmaud Arbery was chased and gunned down by 3 white men while out for a jog. And now new details about the moments leading up to his death are adding to the pain. According to the lead investigator, the man who shot Arbery stood over him as he lay dying and uttered a racial slur.
Mr. Bryan said that after the shooting took place, before police arrival, while Mr. Arbery was on the ground, that he heard Travis Michael make the statement.
The courtroom left in stunned silence at the probable cause hearing today for the father and son accused of killing Arbery, Gregory and Travis McMichael.
We'll proceed this morning.
Federal prosecutors introducing a possible new motive, racism.
Have you seen any other evidence that he has used that horrible N-word anywhere else? Yes, sir, many times. One particular one that comes to mind is he made the statement that he loved his job because he was out on a boat and there weren't any N-words anywhere.
My initial reaction, both legally and personally, was shock and awe. It's a lot worse than we originally thought.
Prosecutors say Arbery was hunted down by the McMichaels and their neighbor, William Roddy Bryan. While Bryan was recording, Travis McMichael shot and killed Arbery. All 3 men have been charged with murder. The father and son claimed they were trying to make a citizen's arrest, saying they believe Arbery was responsible for several break-ins in this Georgia neighborhood. But today's hearing told a different story.
The new information now really paints a full, broad picture of how long this chase occurred.
Prosecutors claim Arbery tried to run for his life and was trapped between Travis McMichael's truck and Bryan's, which struck him, leaving a dent on the passenger side.
Did he make any admissions to you that his vehicle had any contact with the deceased victim?
Yes, he indicated at one point that his vehicle had contact with the victim.
The 3 men have not yet entered a plea. Lawyers for the McMichaels say their clients are innocent and urge people not to rush to judgment. Kevin Gow is the attorney for William Roddy Bryan.
We're not guilty. We haven't committed any crime. That's why we asked the court to dismiss the charges.
Today's revelation so painful, the Arbery family lawyer broke down in tears outside the court.
Ms. Cooper was sobbing silently to herself. It's very difficult to hear. Excuse me.
And Arbery's mother, Wanda Cooper, walked out of the courtroom. Her grief bone deep and familiar to too many black parents around the country.
Ahmaud was kind. Ahmaud loved, and he also was loved by many.
Arbery played football in high school, attended South Georgia Technical College, and worked at his father's landscaping and car wash business. His life ended on February 23rd. He left his mother's home just outside Brunswick, Georgia for his daily jog, eventually running through Satilla Shores, a mostly white neighborhood just a few miles away. That's when authorities say the McMichaels and Bryan began to chase him.
I don't know what sweet world. Stop right there! Stop!
The cell phone video taken by Bryan shows Arbery running, veering around a pickup truck. Then you see him struggling with Travis McMichael, who was armed with a shotgun. Arbery was not armed. By the time police arrived, the 25-year-old was dead in the street, shot 3 times, twice in the chest. 64-year-old Gregory McMichael used to work in county law enforcement, first as a police officer, then as an investigator for the local district attorney's office. Local police did not make any arrests in the killing for over 2 months, until the video leaked to the public in May.
Okay, so it just kind of goes into the backstory of the case. But yes, it now believes that the suspect that was basically chasing him down, which was basically William Bryan, sat there and called the man. I said it called the man literally the N-word. I don't like saying the N-word anyway, so forgive me if I say it like that. But yeah, over his body and decided to use a racial slur. Why is that important? Because it adds to the character of these people. It literally adds to the character of the so-called folks that went out there, decided to play cop, and kill a black man. It adds to the actual character because they try to make it, again, they try to make it seem like they're chasing down a suspect or somebody who's been suspected of burglarizing homes in the area, although there have been no police record of that. At the same time, they're trying to make it look less and less like this was a planned killing. Keep in mind, they're all being charged with first degree. I mean, at this point, first degree is, I mean, they're getting charged with second degree murder right now, but first degree is on the table now. The reason being is because now you're showing premeditation. Now you're showing that you hunted this person down and that your intention was to kill them. And let's be honest, first degree there is the chair, or I think it's lethal injection. So they're trying their hardest, because it's amazing to me how the lawyer was so smug. The lawyer for the defense is so fucking smug. Well, this isn't a murder charge. This isn't a charge. We asked the judge to dismiss the charges. The level of smug that he said that in pissed me off. Because I'm like, wait a minute, you disregard the whole case because you believe that your client's innocent, which all lawyers should do. All lawyers should always have a moral vacuum when it comes to this shit about representing their clients. This is true. But there is something so cut and dry that a lawyer's going to be like, look, they got your ass dead to rights. The only thing we can do is soften the blow, and that's if we're lucky. So it amazes me really does, that guys like him not only exist, but just for the simple fact of the matter, have that smug sense of just, what they do, they defend themselves. This is America. I hate that level. I hate that level of smugness that just, it betwixt my biscuits. It really does. What'd you say, Alex? To clarify, the two cops that pushed 75-year-old men that were just suspended are the ones who have been charged with second-degree assault. Oh, okay. Sorry if I didn't say that right. I apologize. The retaliation is real, but the public stands behind you for doing right. Yeah, Kelly. Honestly, if a cop was calling them out correctly, then there would be no problem. But good luck trying to get that to happen. You're exactly right. I won't argue that. But also, as we go along, guys, I have to point this out. Who knew being a whistleblower paid so much money? Because this one guy who basically called out his bank to the SEC just took home $50 million to a bank because the bank itself was short-selling loans back to their customers at lower amounts. And what that basically allows them to do is that when you are actually selling certain types of loans to your customers, but you're not selling them at the full value, you're basically skimming the top. In which, what these guys did was that they actually gave them what they called less than desirable exchange rates, which means that's not the true exchange rate that these people are getting. And because of that, the companies and people still accepted them, but they accept them at a lower rate than what the true rate is, which means hellified profits for the bank. And personally, this person that was working at this bank decided to call to the SEC and say, hey, this bank is fucking guilty. Which, for anybody that wants to know the name of the bank, it is BNY Mellon. Almost similar to Chase and to kind of the bigger banks, but not really. It's kind of like the sisters to the bigger banks. But anyway, this guy got $50 million for his tip. The messed up part is the bank, which was caught and admitted it, paid more than $700 million in fines, but still denied that the actual case happened. Let me get this straight. One of your own calls you out. For the simple fact of the matter is, you are saying that didn't happen, but you still turn around and pay $700 million. Yeah, that means something happened. And even more so, this is why I sit there and say it for the longest time. How are banks able to commit this type of high-level felony and are still allowed to operate? That is the part I will never understand. It's just like me and Wells Fargo. I will never bank at Wells Fargo. I will never bank at Wells Fargo. I will never go to Bank of America. I will never bank at any of these institutions. Why? Bank of America was caught literally giving lines of credit to known felon and terrorist organizations. It was documented and proven. Bank of America also decided to not help ordinary U.S. citizens. They've declined to do so, but they'll help overseas, especially with banks that actually have banks and companies that have dealings with Bank of America to give loans of credit to those who are not officially U.S. citizens or green card carriers. They've done that. They've all with Wells Fargo just last year. Wells Fargo literally did nearly $1 billion worth of identity theft because certain branches were filling out credit card applications and home loan applications for their members without their knowing. You literally committed $1 billion of identity theft and you are still allowed to operate. If I did that, I'd be in jail tomorrow. A bank does it, they pay a fee and they're fine. I don't understand it. Banks should be held to the same level of criminal punishment as an individual to do the same thing. Because how is it the fact that banks like Bank of America, banks like Wells Fargo, banks like BNY Mellon can operate at that level and pay their way out of basically facing jail time? Even the CEO of Wells Fargo resigned after all said and done. But he got a golden parachute from Wells Fargo that was $80 million. An $80 million golden parachute. For what? Taking the hit? And that's the part that I say with banks, they just for some odd reason, an individual that commits identity theft is more than likely going to be seeing some jail time as a repeat offender. A bank that does it just simply pays a fine. Where is the justice in that? That's my question. But speaking of fact of justice, we all know that the first was 5 days ago, and well, people are worried about the rent, mainly because we are still nowhere as it. And this is the thing I'm going to point out before I play this next story. We are nowhere near ready to reopen. I understand businesses, gyms, hair salons, they're all starting to slowly open. People keep this in mind. We are still in the midst of a coronavirus pandemic. Now, the numbers aren't being reported like they used to be. The whole stressing the stay indoors situation isn't what it used to be. People are still wearing masks. People are still doing social distancing. But let's not get it twisted. It is still possible to catch that virus, especially with large groups. I mean, we just here in Nashville had a peaceful protest a couple days back. And as great as that was, again, unless everybody was taking precautions, that is still ground zero for the virus to spread and things of that nature. So, the reason why I sit there and say, for the simple fact of the matter is, it's not a good jump right now to go ahead and assume all is well. We still need assistance and things of that nature because, like I said, the numbers are still too high. And this whole phase 1 and phase 2 crap honestly needs to be put back to phase 1 until the numbers go down to where we can move to phase 2. You know, like Dr. Fauci said, but you know, then again, Dorito ain't listen to nobody. But anyway, the reason why I point this out is because the rent strike is still going.
We just need the rent to be gone if we can't work.
We can't work, we can't pay.
Renters line the streets and circle in cars, calling this rent strike. It's the first day of the month and nearly $50 billion in rent is due in the U.S.
If a lot of us are already choosing between food and rent, we're saying to choose food.
Across the country, rage rising with job losses climbing. Renters have been sharing warning letters from landlords online. One warns rent is due on the 1st, nothing has changed. One extends a rent deadline only until April 10th, and this one stresses rent is still due. If you've been laid off, it adds, places are hiring, like grocery stores, Amazon, Walmart, and more. Renters are fighting back from this Los Angeles protest to signs of resistance posted across the Midwest. From Chicago to Brooklyn, New York, to New Orleans, pledging to not pay. Los Angeles and New York mayors issued no eviction orders, but renters say that's not enough.
If we can't pay that rent and we're in debt, how are we supposed to get out of that debt post-quarantine?
Did you lose your job?
Yes, all of us lost our job.
Because of coronavirus, says Shawana Anthony. She used to make enough at Restaurant Rosa Mexicano to cover her Los Angeles apartment rent.
Check out my little 500 square feet, $1,100 a month.
How are you gonna pay this $1,100 rent?
I don't know. When you're scared, you don't see nothing but fear. So those people, they don't have nothing else but a sign in their car.
These rent strikers, you feel for them.
Oh, absolutely. 20 years ago, it would have been me.
But today, Matthew Heisert sits on the other side as a landlord. He is working with his tenants, but can only do so much.
I have no ability to handle this beyond a couple of months.
His family started out in a small condo just before the 2008 mortgage crisis, which left them $70,000 underwater. Unable to sell, but able to rent the condo, they're still climbing out of the red.
Someone loses their job. They can no longer afford to pay rent. Follow it through. If I can't pay that mortgage and I have to pay that mortgage at some point, well, that could bankrupt me.
And that's the thing about the rent strike, is the reason why a moratorium, a national moratorium, was so needed. Even though they did do a federal moratorium, but the federal only covers federally subsidized housing and apartments, which means that if you were living under Section 8, if you're doing HUD housing, things of that nature, your mortgage payments were actually put on freezing. That was supposed to be until the end of June, in which July was supposed to be the cutoff point for all this before the extension started. The simple fact of the matter is just that we are still in the middle of it. Say what you want about the jobs report, which I was going to get to very, very soon about the jobs report, was that we are still sitting at an unemployment rate of 13.3% as of today. Of course, the jobs report that came out, 2.1 million jobs were added. That right now is a drop in the ocean. Because keep in mind, we were initially at one point nearly over 14% as an unemployment rate. And you still had millions of jobs that were essentially put on furlough or let go or fired. And you still have at least over 4 million Americans still waiting for their unemployment check that some of them have yet to receive. So with all that being said, how is it that now, of course, like I said, with the first of the month just passed 5 days ago, it is when you have to make a decision between rent and food, like that one woman said, that you gotta make a decision between rent and food. You're gonna choose food. You need to eat. You can't have a place over your head if you don't have, you can have a place over your head all you want, but if you don't have food, you're not gonna last very long. So especially if you have kids, things of that nature, it just makes more sense that there needs to be official help. But unfortunately, we're not going to get that anytime soon, because they expected the jobs report. This is the thing that has always pissed me off about Republicans. And if you are a Republican, I still don't know why you're a Republican, because basically you're voting against your own interest, in my opinion. But because of the job report that came out this Friday, even though I don't know why they called it a good report, it's 2.1 million jobs and the employment rate is still at 13.3%. If this was President Obama talking about this, Fox News would be jumping down his goddamn throat. So the thing about this is that one of the actual advisors for Dorito sat there and said that, this is probably maybe the best monthly jobs report in American history, and he emphasized that additional federal spending to individuals, business, or states is unnecessary. He says, quote unquote, "We certainly don't need any new spending. We've already spent over $2 trillion, so we don't need another spending bill for sure. We are in the recovery stage and we are no longer in the contraction stage. I don't think you're going to see any support among Republicans for a bailout of states and cities. The most important thing is to now get rid of the extra unemployment benefits that are so discouraging to work and unfair to people who are working." The most important thing now is to get rid of the extra unemployment benefits that are so discouraging to work and unfair to people who are working? Okay, so let me tell you why that's a crock of shit. Simple put, it's just that first off, conservatives swear up and down they hate spending, but they actually spend the most. They actually spend it on corporations and Wall Street. They don't like spending it on their own people because they'll sit there and claim that people need to have personal responsibility or some shit like that. On top of that, here's how out of touch he is that this jobs report says nothing. 2.1 million versus 13.3% means that you still have well over nearly 2 million people still out of work. Like I said, it's a drop in the bucket. It does no good, because if you are looking at this jobs report and you're saying, oh, well, jobs are coming back, but your job doesn't come back. Again, and I apply this to Republicans, because Republicans will always sit there and say shit like this because it doesn't apply to them. Because the simple fact of the matter is just that, well, I think we need to get back to, getting back to contracting, because now we're starting to see an uptick. No, you're really not. 2.1 million is not an uptick. If 13.3 became 5.5 over the course of 2 weeks, that's an uptick. If a vaccine for the coronavirus or a cure for the coronavirus came out and was successful and lowered the cases within 2 weeks, again, that's an uptick. What this is bullshit, because they don't want to turn around and still give these people help. People across the state need help. People across the U.S. need help. Along with rent, along with utilities, which some utilities people have not disconnected, which I have to give it to it, because NES in my home state of Tennessee, as much as I dislike them, did come out, sit there and say, if you're past due, we are not going to disconnect your services up until July. Which now it seems like what they're trying to do, because of the 4th of July and all that crap. Because I'm sorry, I don't celebrate 4th of July. I'm a Juneteenth person, because the 4th of July is just an excuse for me to barbecue. That's all it is. But with that being said, they are trying to aim for this July 4th opening for patriotic and blindfold reasons. Now, it amazes me so, like I said, and thank you, Alex, for pointing that out. The numbers for COVID-19 have never been higher in Tennessee. We're averaging greater than 400 new cases per day, and we are over, I was about to say that, over nearly 8,200 active cases. And it's true. And it's only because, again, we are not ready. I know people are cooped up. I know, you can still go outside your own home. You can still, like my patio back there, if I'm feeling cooped up, I'll just go outside and go enjoy nature. You can still go walk around. You can still go exercise. You can still go out and get food where applicable. But at this point, we don't need to go full-blown like everything is normal again. And you're right, Kelly. 2 weeks from now, our coronavirus numbers nationwide will be even higher. Yes, it takes 2 weeks for the incubation period for COVID-19 to show any symptoms. And even though those who do have COVID-19 but are not sick are still carriers. So you can still, even if you're not showing symptoms of the coronavirus, you can still give it to somebody else. Oh, how would you do that? Oh, I don't know, if you decide to go to, a large gathering of sorts, or if you're not wearing a mask. Like, I admit, I'm still waiting for my mask to come through. I actually need to do it yourself and have my own mask. But again, a lot of us are not taking the necessary precautions. We're not. Like, for example, if you feel a little bit of sick, don't go out. That fucking simple. But you would be surprised with the simple fact of the matter is just that everybody thinks at this point that, for the lack of better words, we are okay enough to proceed moving forward with the next opening. I don't think we are. I personally think that we need to hold off. But again, we're going to find out, because like I said, that second wave infection is definitely coming. But moving right along, guys, another thing that has pissed me off about the government today, aside from this, is Rand Paul. Now, for all those that don't remember Rand Paul, he was the idiot that got coronavirus and still went to work even though he knew. Still worked out at a gym that he knew he had the coronavirus. And he is the one lone lawmaker out there that is preventing the passing of the Emmett Till bill, otherwise known as the anti-lynching bill. Now, there is anti-lynching legislation out there, but unfortunately, Trump's personal wall, Mitch McConnell, has yet to bring it to the floor. But Rand Paul, who is the only Republican that is against this on the Senate, has decided that he's going to stand against this, reason being because he's saying there's a problem with the wording. And he says, and I quote, "The bill as written would allow altercations resulting in a cut, abrasion, bruise, or any other injury, no matter how temporary, to be subject to a 10-year penalty." The reason being for that is that he's referring to, he's actually referring to the law itself, which pretty much sat there, which it says itself, that the anti-lynching law or the Emmett Bill Till law would subject up to a person to either more than 10 years in prison, 10 years or 10 years or life in prison, or the death penalty if it abides. And what this fool is saying is that the wording, it can be substituted. For example, if you got a cut, or if you got a bruise, that can be translated as lynching. I thought to myself, that is the weakest ass excuse I've ever heard. Because lynching is hanging. That's pretty much it. So if you are caught hanging somebody, that is lynching. That is automatically considered a hate crime. So therefore it's accurate. If a person is assaulted by an individual that is literally only coming after them for reasons of bias and bigotry and being a racist, again, that's a hate crime. What Rand Paul is saying is this, that if I today decided to go out and basically beat up a white person only because I wanted to, he's saying that could be considered lynching. Yeah, he's saying that. He's saying that, well, I just want the wording to be changed. What possible way does it need to be changed? If you are hanging somebody because you can't stand their race, that is lynching. If you hang somebody, that is still lynching. Therefore, seems clear as day to me. But I shouldn't be surprised by Rand Paul, because like I said, he is the one idiot out there that will block so much shit for no reason. But to be completely honest, he's not the only idiot out there. Trust me, there was a race between two idiots that I'm gonna do before we get to our good news segment. But beforehand, I did want to talk about a couple of things. Because as you see, the world is waking up. And I love the fact that the world is waking up. That means businesses are waking up. Which again, shout out to Ben & Jerry's, because that statement that y'all put out, if you guys haven't seen it, look up Ben & Jerry's on Twitter or on Instagram or whatever social media that you have. They put out a statement about the current social climate, and I was like, I never had Ben & Jerry's, but I think I'm going to give them a shot now. But I shouldn't be surprised, because Ben & Jerry's has always been social activists. They spoke out against Chick-fil-A when they went against the LGBTQ. They were actually on the side of pro-choice with women and the abortion law. They are no strangers speaking out. But what they said about George Floyd, and what they said about police, and what they said about white supremacy, I think we'll get some Ben & Jerry's this weekend. I'm already getting pizza this weekend, but I think we'll get some Ben & Jerry's this weekend. But anyway, this actually brings up to how CEOs are now looking at, the diversity issue. Y'all, come on now. Everybody has been to that meeting at your job about diversity, and you look around and it's not diverse. Well, they're trying to change that.
Trickle, Silicon Valley companies like Salesforce and Apple speaking out days after the killing of George Floyd, but now it has become an avalanche as corporate America breaks its silence on race amid nationwide protests. The leaders of America's most powerful businesses are facing pressure from their customers and employees to act.
I say to you today, no more. No more. Racism of any kind is divisive. It's ugly, and it brings about the worst of humanity.
Ben & Jerry's, the Vermont-based ice cream company that is no stranger to activism, offering one of the most strongly worded statements calling for concrete steps to dismantle white supremacy in all its forms.
In order for us to make the kind of progress that we need as a nation and as a society, it requires us to acknowledge and to embrace some hard truths.
Nike flipping its iconic slogan, "Just do it," on its head, now pleading, for once, don't do it. Don't turn your back on racism. And 9 of Detroit's largest businesses, including General Motors CEO Mary Barra, now coming together to pledge that they will push for action.
We will stand up against injustice, and that means taking the risk of expressing unpopular or polarizing points of view, because complacency and complicity sit in the shadow of silence.
It's a dramatic change for predominantly white corporate America, but for some, the outpouring of support for protests rings hollow. Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez blasting companies for releasing bland statements with a hashtag, tweeting, "Your statement should include your org's internal commitments to change." Activists also panning this statement from the National Football League, which they noted failed to mention policing or racism at all. And it comes 4 years after NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick's protest against police brutality prompted a threat from the league to punish players who knelt during the national anthem. Today, something has changed, and for the companies like Ben & Jerry's that have long spoken out, it's overdue.
Typically, what companies do is use that power to advance their own narrow self-interest. There is a cost to that. That if the rest of the society is burning down around us, can't have a healthy company in a sick society.
Abby Phillip,
And he's right. You can't have a company, you really cannot have a company where all this is going on, and yet at the same time, you eventually have to basically own up to that. Although I do like the fact that the one thing I will sit there and say above all else, the NFL and pretty much most of America, you guys owe Colin Kaepernick a serious ass apology. That's all I'm gonna sit there and say. You guys owe such an apology to Colin Kaepernick, especially those who are now trying to come forward and try and defend him now, which I find funny as hell. But moving right along, guys, with simple fact of the matter, like I said, there's also one other thing that I do want to point out before we get to our battle of two idiots. For the simple fact of the matter is, as this is going on, a lot of the greatest group of people right now that are being affected are kids. But the simple fact of the matter is, kids are very observant. They see what's going around there in the world. They see what's going around the world, and a lot of kids are feeling it. And if you're like me and you grew up, you had to have that talk. That talk with your parents about everything that's going on. That talk with your parents about, how to deal with the police, how people are going to treat you because you're different, how you're going to have to work twice as hard, or my personal favorite, how to seem non-threatening. Because y'all see me. I'm big. I admit that. I have locks that need to be fixed. I understand that. And I have been told. I have been told until I'm starting to talk to people. I have been told I'm intimidating. I don't see it, but I've been told. So all my life, I had to learn how to be non-threatening, and that in itself is such a struggle that I can't begin where to begin on that. But again, I understand it. Even more so that now kids in this generation are now seeing this full blown. And I gotta admit, when I saw this, it hit me. It hit me pretty hard.
To see.
It's just sad.
We brought together kids 8 to 14 years old from Massachusetts to California to hear what they're thinking about the death of George Floyd and the protests that erupted.
I cried, if I'm being honest.
Understandably, there's heightened fear among Black kids.
I am afraid because I'm afraid of, if I go outside, then something will happen to me or my family.
But fear even if you're not Black.
And I'm a bit afraid that these
like riots and stuff, that if they get too big and too out of hand, they could kind of like go into just houses and stuff.
The kids also expressed disappointment.
People should already know that we have to treat people equally and not judge anybody just because they're black or white.
Psychologists say parents should help kids talk about what they're seeing. But it's hard, even for me with my son. From the time he was little to now as a teenager, I've struggled to find the right words to tell my black child about how to stay safe when he's not with me.
It's important to say, you know, I can imagine how you're feeling. Sometimes I feel that way. And to listen.
The kids that we talk to say images like these give them hope.
I think it's good that the police officers are like showing that not all police are bad.
What have you learned this week?
One thing I did learn is something about the American human nature, and that we are capable of coming together, protesting together, and sticking up for each other.
No matter your race, we must all live peacefully.
Children standing up for the future they want to see. Rahima Ellis, NBC News, New York.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. It's the fact of, you know, kids, they always say kids say the darndest things, but actually they're actually the most honest ones out there. And for the simple fact of the matter is, when you see kids like that really explain their situation and, you know, looking at parents, and like I said, I'm not a parent. I hope to be a parent one day, you know, but I fear with my daughter or with my son or daughters and sons, however, whatever comes down the pike, I'm not putting anything out there, but having that discussion is, I was hoping this might seem very, very, very great or foolish, that I do hope one day either myself or another black man who becomes a father never has to have that conversation with their child ever again. I hope that conversation dies when racism dies. I hope that conversation dies when finally there's equality. I hope that conversation dies. I hope a black child does not have to hear that conversation that the world is against them. I hope that a child never has to hear that, yes, you're going to have to work twice as hard and you're going to be judged 3 times as worse. That you have to be perfect, that you cannot make a mistake, that you have to literally know more and do more than the other side, because the other side will not be judged as harshly. But to do all this, I mean, the one thing I'll say about, like, I don't watch Scandal that much because I know Scandal is actually wrapped up. But the one line from Scandal when I used to watch it was so true, is when you saw Kerry Washington's father in the show look at his daughter and say, how many times did I tell you, you have to work twice as hard to get half of what they have. Albeit it's a scripted drama, but the line doesn't make it any truer. And where you guys are saying it's not hard to stay home, things are traditionally done in person, like Dungeons and Dragons can be easily played online, just stay the fuck home. Exactly, Alex. It's not that hard to stay at home. It really isn't. But, you know, again, people believe that, you know, they have to be social for their mental health. I get that to an extent, but there are areas you can go to keep mental health and things of that nature. I completely get all of that. But still, staying home right now means that we'll be able to actually go out and enjoy nature later. But as long as we don't follow the rules, this is going to keep going on. This is how viruses work. It's not that freaking hard. But anyway, going right now, guys, before we get to our good news segment, I'm going to present a tale of 2 idiots. And trust me, usually the idiot of the week is usually Dorito, but in this case, Dorito has company. I'll start with Dorito first because he is our reigning champion of being idiots. And, well, let's be honest. Doritos had an interesting week.
The sounds of flashbangs heard in the background. President Trump tonight saying he's deploying thousands of military and civilian police to stop what he calls the rioting and looting across the country.
I have strongly recommended to every governor to deploy the National Guard in sufficient numbers that we dominate the streets. If a city or state refuses to take the actions that are necessary to defend the life and property of their residents, then I will deploy the United States military and quickly solve the problem for them.
Earlier, the president lashing out at governors during a video conference, calling them weak and urging them to take a hard line against protesters, according to audio obtained by NBC News.
You have to dominate. If you don't dominate, you're wasting your time. They're going to run over you. You're going to look like a bunch of jerks. President Trump pushing the governors to use force to take back the streets. You know, when other countries watch this, they're watching us and they say, boy, they're really a pushover. At least one governor, Democrat J.B. Pritzker of Illinois, pushed back.
And say that I've been extraordinarily concerned about the rhetoric that's been used by you. It's been inflammatory.
Okay, well, thank you very much, JB. I don't like your rhetoric much either.
The conference call followed the latest night of unrest across the country as many peaceful demonstrations exploded into violence. NBC's Garrett Hake covering the protests in Washington, D.C.
All day long Sunday, more than 1,000 peaceful protesters packed this park and the streets around it. But late at night, some set fires, including in the building behind me. So about that time, police decided they needed to clear this street. They used rubber bullets, gas, and flashbangs to do it, all of it happening in the shadow of the White House.
Multiple sources tell NBC News that some of the president's closest allies are urging him to strike a more unifying tone. His advisors divided over the proper response. Meantime, Joe Biden today held his first in-person campaign event in over 2 months. The apparent Democratic presidential nominee met with community leaders at a predominantly black church in his hometown.
The Band-Aid has been ripped off by this pandemic and this president.
And tonight, President Trump left the White House to visit St. John's Church, part of which was set ablaze during the protests. That was after police cleared a large group of peaceful protesters in the area with rubber bullets and flashbangs. Lester?
Okay, and that's one. And trust me, that's not the only thing Dorito did. You know, they sat there and he called the governors weak for not taking on the protesters, saying that governors aren't doing more. Well, when they came to Pennsylvania Avenue, he kind of bitched out.
Going up around the White House as protests in Washington clearly are continuing. Very peaceful protests underway right now. Let's go to our chief White House correspondent, Jim Acosta. Jim, the White House often referred to as the people's house, but tonight the people are being kept further away.
That is certainly the case, Wolf. The Trump administration is building what increasingly looks like a fortress around the White House. Early this morning, crews began extending metal fencing, a steel wall, if you will, from Pennsylvania Avenue virtually all the way down to Constitution Avenue, across the street from the National Mall. That is on, and there's some of that fencing right there. That is on top of the fencing that's already surrounding the White House. In addition to that, there remains a militarized and police presence in Lafayette Park around the White House, giving this area the look of something out of an authoritarian country, not the people's house as you described it. And on top of all of that, White House officials say, quote, all options are on the table for dealing with these protesters.
Don Lemon is still with us. Don, you know, I was CNN's White House correspondent in 1995, right after the Oklahoma City bombing, a truck bombing, the Murrah Federal Office Building. That resulted in the closing off of Pennsylvania Avenue completely. In the aftermath of that, they were afraid of a truck bombing at the White House. That security was bolstered dramatically back then, but now we see it even bolstered more as this line continues to expand beyond the perimeter even of the White House.
Just looking at these pictures, Wolf, they are images of fear, images of a president who is desperate and who is afraid, an administration desperate and afraid, sealing them off quite literally and physically from the American people. we have to remember the Trumps, the administration, the advisors, they don't own the White House. They are simply borrowing it because the American people have afforded them the opportunity to live there and work there. They draw a salary from the American people. The American people hired them temporarily to work in these facilities, basically public housing. But what it is the people's house. And now it has become the people's fortress. So America now looks like the most famous house in the world, even more famous than 10 Downing Street, is now a fortress of fear. This president afraid, running down into a bunker, and then pretending a few days later that he was just inspecting it. These photographs are embarrassing. It's embarrassing that they're pushing protesters back. It's understandable what happened during the Oklahoma City bombing, that they would want to secure the area. But for some protesters on the streets exercising their rights, come on, this is awful.
Okay, we're not done, because Dorito is going for the trifecta.
President Trump at one point invoked the name George Floyd.
They have to receive fair treatment from law enforcement. They have to receive it. We all saw what happened last week. We can't let that happen. Hopefully George is looking down right now and saying there's a great thing that's happening for our country. There's a great day for him. It's a great day for everybody. This is a great day for everybody. This is a great, great day in terms of equality.
After the speech, the president shushed a reporter who asked how he plans to address systemic racism.
What's your plan?
Because our country is so strong, and that's what my plan is.
2020 Democratic contender Joe Biden slamming the president's remark about George Floyd while campaigning today in Delaware.
For the president to try to put any other words in the mouths of George Floyd, I frankly think is despicable.
All of it unfolding as President Trump's former chief of staff, John Kelly, said today he agrees with former Trump Defense Secretary Jim Mattis, who this week slammed the president's leadership in a scathing op-ed.
I agree with him. I think we need to look harder at who we elect.
Kelly, a retired four-star Marine general, also cautioned against the president's threat to use troops to put down protests.
The troops hate it. They don't see it as their job. They don't want to be used in that way unless it's really extremist.
Since Monday's unrest, workers have transformed the already secure White House complex into a fortress. A tall wall of steel fencing now surrounding the perimeter. And the Trump administration has deployed an alphabet soup of law enforcement and military personnel to police the streets of the nation's capital. D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser says she wants them gone.
We don't think that soldiers should be in the nation's capital patrolling or policing streets. We've made that formal request to the White House.
The mayor sending a message tonight, directing artists to paint the words Black Lives Matter on a street leading directly to the White House, and renaming it Black Lives Matter Plaza, she says, to honor demonstrators urging changes in police practices. Tonight, Washington, D.C. is anticipating what could be the largest protest yet.
Okay, so that's Dorito. And trust me, Dorito's got competition. Now, of course, I did show you out the fact that Dorito has fucked up on 3 accounts. He sat there and called Governors Week while hiding in his bunker, that he says that he was personally inspecting when protesters were outside the White House, and now all of a sudden the White House has a wall. Hey, so Dorito finally got the wall he wanted, just 3,000 miles in the opposite direction. And of course, invoking George Floyd's name is saying that he would love the jobs report that just came out, when that had nothing to do with the fact that he died at the hands of corrupt and racist cops. Yes, Dorito has certainly set the bar as our usual champion for Idiot of the Week. But trust me, he's got competition, and who knew it would come from the NFL? Observe.
Lacking awareness and any type of compassion. The New Orleans Saints quarterback apologizing after this interview.
I will never agree with anybody disrespecting the flag of the United States of America.
Breeze was asked by Yahoo Finance what he thinks about players kneeling against racial injustice during the national anthem.
Is everything right with our country right now? No, it's not. We still have a long way to go. But I think what you do by standing there and showing respect to the flag with your hand over your heart is it shows unity.
The comments triggering fierce backlash, even among his own teammates.
And I'm telling you, I'm dealing with these things. I'm telling you, my communities are dealing with these things. And your response to me is, don't talk about that here. Where's the place, Drew?
NBA superstar LeBron James also weighing in. Wow, man, you literally still don't understand why Cap was kneeling on one knee. Has nothing to do with disrespect of the flag. In his apology, Breeze writes in part, I stand with the black community in the fight against systemic racial injustice and police brutality. I am sick about the way my comments were perceived yesterday, but I take full responsibility. Former player Booger McFarland appearing to mock Breeze. I'm sorry for the way that America is crucifying me. I'm not sorry for what I said. Got it. But others were more forgiving.
For him to admit that he was wrong and say, you know what, I can do better and I will do better. I think that is a leadership at its finest.
The question is whether it's enough to unify a team and a league still very deeply divided. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News.
And there we have it, your two contenders for Idiot of the Week. Of course, our reigning champion, Dorito, who has literally sat there. Let's break down what he's done so far again, shall we, ladies and gentlemen? He called Governor's Week while hiding in his own bunker while protesters came down Pennsylvania Avenue. Mayor Bowser, as we already sat there and said, did kind of an FU move by saying by paying Black Lives Matter and changing the street from Pennsylvania Avenue to Black Lives Matter Boulevard. And on top of that, invoking the name of George Floyd, saying that he would be happy about the fact that the job report came out and was actually very positive, which again, we've already said that it wasn't. That's Doritos' claim to this week. Drew Brees, who, for all those that may not know, did come out and sit there and say, he sat there and said, I don't agree with anybody that takes a knee during the flag. Oh, so it's 2018 all over again. That's nice. And it amazes me so that Drew Brees, who is a high-profile NFL player, who again can take the initiative and sit there and say and speak out about the systemic racism, can speak about the social inequalities for minorities, can sit there and say because 90% of his team is black, would turn around and sit there and say, you know what, I agree, I may not understand, but I will stand with you. Like many other people have done. I have seen many people who are not black sit there and say, I will never understand your struggle, but I will stand with you, which is the most positive thing you can say. Even more so in doing. Now, people have taken far steps beyond that in doing. They have marched with us, protested with us. Some even use themselves as human shields in protest. You guys are always invited to the cookout in my book. But Drew Brees, I'm going to be honest with you, he fucked up. He fucked up about the whole thing and saying, I will never respect those that kneel at the time when you didn't understand, which at this point, how blind can you be to understand what they're kneeling for? This is why I said the NFL owes Kaepernick an apology, because even Roger Goodell's statement about the NFL and their stance on racism and what's happening was still lacking a lot of shit. That's why I say Goodell's a spineless bastard. He really is. And at the same time, Drew Brees is going to double down on his comments. I'm sorry for what I said, but I'm not really sorry how you took it. That's pretty much what he said. He didn't walk back his comments. He sat there and still said, I believe there's unification of saluting the flag. Really? You know who else thought it was unification of saluting a flag? Hitler. Nazis. Nazis love saluting flags. Because you know why? They were told to. By a totalitarian dictator who truly believed that their race was a superior race. Now, why is that relevant to Drew Brees? Because Drew Brees falls into that category of people I like to call misguided patriotism. Like, for me, I stopped saying the Pledge of Allegiance and putting my hand over my heart to the flag. I stopped doing that in 5th grade. Because something in my head clicked. Why am I saying words that I don't believe in? Why am I acknowledging a flag that didn't do anything for me? It's the truth. So again, Drew Brees, knowing that, being around black people, being around a state that had one of the worst hurricanes in recorded history, and the devastation to this day is still being in the recovery process, that you've been around black people, you've played with black people, you've conversated with black people, that you would turn around and have such an asinine view of things is amazing to me. But it only shows your true character. I've always sat there and said this about people. When feet are put to the fire, you get to see what type of person you're dealing with. And in this case, Drew Brees is no exception. So again, I don't get how his teammate tried to come out there and say, oh, well, he's showing unification. I said, dude, is it the fact that you're on the same team as him that you have to show unity? Because I would think that you don't have to. But again, I'm not the cat that points it out. I'm just sitting there saying, you know, like Booker said, he said there said, I'm not sorry the way I said it. I am sorry how the way you took it. That alone screams volumes about the type of cat that you're dealing with, in my opinion. So I'm gonna start doing polls on this. Who was the greater idiot of the week? In my sense, although Drew was an idiot for probably putting his health and football career on the line, because now every black player, specifically defensive player, is probably going to have you on their wall and is probably going to sit there and say, the first chance you get, knock this sumbitch out. You probably made yourself a bigger target in the NFL than racism at this moment. Good luck, Drew. But in my opinion, who won this week was Dorito. Dorito is literally a scared little boy with a fake-ass toupee and an overgrown tan trying to play a big dude. Because, let's be honest, as The Rock said, where is our leader? Our leader is nowhere to be found, except when he's in a bunker, because he has to inspect it at a time when protesters are outside of his house. He also put up a fencing that is already away from a wall around the White House, making it a fortress. Which looks very dictatorship, actually. But again, it's not that hard when it comes to Dorito, because if there's a way to fuck it up, Dorito's gonna say, hold my beer. So, with that being said, guys, that's going to do it for our stories. We're going to go ahead and get to our feel-good news segments, because I do feel after all this, and thank you all guys for rolling me on this. Again, I must apologize. I was actually running very late on this. But I do apologize. But I do thank everybody that stuck around with me. I certainly do appreciate that, by the way. But with that also being said, though, we're going to go ahead and get to our feel-good news story. Like I said about our feel-good news story here on How the Frack We Got Here, we do cover a lot of information. Some of it could be dark, some of it could be very disheartening, but it's the weekend. We want to put it on a good note, leave you with some good feelings and things of that nature. And trust me, after this week, we definitely all could use it. And I'm going to start with this one. With George Floyd, I said the best. I said George Floyd, his death was definitely a catalyst. It was a catalyst for a lot of people to come forward and to organize, to act, to unify. And I love the fact that, you know, his name is going to be memorized with the scholarship. Because I always said it best, it's, you know, we should never forget to say their names. And not just George Floyd, not just Ahmaud Arbery, not just Breonna Taylor, not just Sean Bell, not just Botham Jean, not just Eric Gardner, not just Trayvon Martin. I could keep going. Not just Sandra Bland. the whole idea of it all is to not forget to say their names. Their names should always be remembered. And even though the smallest gestures are always great, this university, North Central University of Minneapolis, has started the George Scholarship Fund to honor the man, and this fund will actually go to produce future urban leaders, which is business leaders, social leaders, things of that nature. And I love the fact where the president of the university sat there and said, "I am now challenging every university president in the United States to establish your own George Floyd Memorial Scholarship Fund." And that itself, to me, it's a small gesture. It is, but it's a gesture that, like I said, should be taken, should be honored, and hopefully that can go on. Because, like I said, it goes to the whole thing about not only saying their names, because we never want to forget. Black people, we don't forget. We don't. We are, if anything, we don't forget. You can't forget racism when it's brought up to your face every day. And I love the fact that this university is trying to, this first verse is like, well, we are going to plant seeds in hopes that that we bring peaceful trees. We hope. But again, I just thought that was pretty cool. What did you guys say before I go on to the next one? Kelly, you showed your true colors. We saw it. Can't take it back. Yeah, that's true. People only want to accept kneeling now because of everything going on at the moment. Stand by what you said. We know how you really feel. That's also true. He only took it because he wants those black men on his team to protect him on the field. He knew he messed up. Yeah, well, it's not the only. It's not. Drew ain't the only. Drew's team is not the only person he's got to worry about, because there's going to be some bros out there that's going to be looking for him on or off the field. But aside from that, guys, the next story I got here is one here that's close to heart in Nashville, where a black man who was afraid to walk in his own community, and this guy right here, I'm not going to say his name, 29-year-old black man in Nashville, usually walks along his neighborhood, has been in his neighborhood for almost over 50, his family has been there for a long time. And he always used to walk around his neighborhood, and he always felt like he was safe. It wasn't up until what happened to him on Albury that he honestly felt he didn't feel safe walking around his own neighborhood. I can't blame the guy. And so with that being said, his neighbors decided upon themselves to go walking with him. And that's actually a picture of him and his neighbors right there. And I just thought to myself, that is a sign of solidarity. That is a sign that where it sat there and said, I mean, and I can't blame him. If you're a guy that literally turned around and used to feel safe, like, you should feel safe in your home. You should feel safe in your neighborhood. And I can't blame any black man that goes jogging or goes out by himself or just goes about town. You can't help but now, if you're not already paranoid, you're actually at an all-time level. But I love the fact of his neighborhood that, knowing this and found out about it, decided that when he decided to go jogging, they were going to go with him. And I just thought that was a sign of solidarity. I thought that was cool. I thought that is saying, you know what, you're scared, but it's hard to be scared in numbers. And I thought to myself that was pretty cool. You know, it's a gentrified neighborhood. You didn't really see that many black people, but hey, I'm not knocking it, because white people who stand with us may not fully understand our struggle, but stand with us. You're always welcome to jog with us. Personally, I prefer jogging on an elliptical, but hey, whatever makes you feel good. So I just thought that was pretty cool. Aside from that, guys, this is another reason why I always say, if I become a parent and I become a daughter, I'm sorry, that came out all the way wrong. If I become a father and I have a daughter, this I thought was pretty cool, because I kind of picture myself being this guy in this situation, only to keep your little girl happy. And I just thought this was pretty cool.
That'll make you smile. Okay, so there's a guy named Christoph Kyle. He posted this on Instagram, and he wrote this. So I tried to support another black-owned business for lunch today. It's called Ava's Kitchen. It's a clean, very clean establishment, but whew, let me tell you about the owner. I've been waiting to get my order done for 45 minutes, and I'm the only customer here. She was making good progress at first, and then she stopped for 20 minutes to go watch Paw Patrol. Overall, customer service could be better, but the cook is a real cutie, so I'll give her another chance.
Oh, don't you
Come on.
love that?
Okay.
I love that.
I can't
Now, see, I picture myself, that's probably going to be me. And my daughter, who is trying to keep my attention. And like I said before, I don't have any children, but I can only imagine that, if down the road, I am to be a father and that's my daughter, I'm not gonna lie, I'm probably gonna be sitting right there at the table looking at her like, so you gonna go watch Paw Patrol, and you told me you was gonna make me breakfast, and you decided to go watch Paw Patrol. I ain't gonna give you. I'm not gonna give you 1 star on Yelp, but come on, honey, you gotta do better than this. But no, I thought that was cute. I think the little girl's adorable. That's why I thought to myself, oh, if I become a father and she's a girl and she looks like her mother, I'm gonna have murderous intent with every boy that looks at her. I already see it coming. The headache. Yep. Every boy that looks at her the same way, I'm just gonna be that dude. If a boy tries to reach out for her hand in kindergarten, nope, I don't need that in my head right now. Don't need that in my head right now. I'm good. I'm sorry, but anyway, looking forward to it. But aside from that, like I said, I have another video of these challenges. Now, if you've seen me with these challenges, I don't really do these challenges. I think that, yes, some of them are interesting, some of them are pretty cool, some of them are just like, why? This one I thought was pretty cool because, let's be honest, it's a kid, and I just, it's fun to see when kids do this. And I like that. Just because of the fact of the matter, it's basically a child, the wipe it down challenge, they wipe, and then they show themselves. There was another one where there's another one with another black guy, but I like that one just because I like the fact that, a kid always sat there and said, are we superheroes? And I cannot remember the movie. I wish I remembered the movie. Where a black son had asked his father, are we superheroes? And he sat there and said, son, we are, but the world doesn't know it. The world refuses to acknowledge it. So that made me think of that. I wish I knew the name of that movie that it came from. I'm usually pretty good with movies because I'm a movie nut. But it's going to come to me in a minute. But anyway, I love the fact that when I saw that and he wiped down, he saw he was Superman. I personally wish he was Batman, but that's a whole other story. But the fact that he was so excited, that level of joy on his face, that's just something you just cannot replace. But again, I just thought it was pretty cool. And like I said, if I have a son, like I said, if I'm a future parent down the road and I have a son, yes, he will be a Batman fan. I'm sorry, that's just bound to happen. He will also be a Sith fan because we're not Jedi. We are powerful. Anyway, that's not the point. But aside from that, that's really all the stories I got, guys. I do want to thank everybody for watching again. Apologies for starting late. Forgot to set the alarm clock this morning, and yeah, that's exactly what happened. Forgot to set the alarm clock this morning. And we did have a lot more news than we usually do, so I do thank everybody for watching. I do thank everybody for liking, sharing, subscribing, and just letting other people know about it. Because I've had people, come up to me and say, "Hey, you're that guy that has that podcast." That narrowed the field immediately. He goes, "Oh, well, you have that frack. How the frack we frack something." I said, "How the frack we got here?" Yeah. I was like, okay, of course, I like the fact of being recognized and noticed. And don't get me wrong, that's what I'm trying to do, because if I could do this job on a daily basis, I would. But again, I just want to thank everybody for watching, and also for commenting. I try to catch all the comments. I think we ran so long that my Facebook Live commenter just broke on me. So if I wasn't able to get to your comments, I certainly apologize. It was not intended to be ignored, but I will go back and see them once this broadcast is over and comment then. Aside from that, guys, I am not the only person that has podcasts going on. I'll start with Vaughn, Big BZA Dot, on all social medias. He actually has the BSTs, or Busy Solo Takes. I call it a news podcast because that news can be music, video games, or trailers, interactive show just like mine. He also has Rhythmness, where you can reminisce over the rhythm, which goes with the albums of the past and present, and grades to a 4-tier rating system. Also informative and interactive show just like mine. He also has Random as Fuck, which is the pool of ratchets we sometimes dip our toes into, take a break from life and have a chuckle. Some videos make you think, some videos make you cry. Some videos will still stick with you to the end of time. I know mine because I found it and I saved it, because I always love watching the old man rapping in the booth. It's still funny as hell to me. Also, my other buddy, Thomas Reed, aka the Mountain Puncher, has his own show, To Be Determined, every Saturday from 3 to 5 on Facebook Live under his YouTube page at the number 2, letter T, letter B, letter D. That's To Be Determined, and also his Facebook page at Thomas Reed. In which in his show he just goes over everything fitness, workouts, nutrition, just things that you can do, and just personal subjects that he feels are relative. But he is definitely inclined, and like I said, he's probably sitting at a gym just right now, that he will be probably, if he's not already working out, he probably already has already. But would love to show how to get there with you to actually meet your own personal Zeno. Also, my other brother from another brother, Trace Brown, King Anyway on all social medias, and also has a couple of podcasts of his own. The first one is called The Bump Down, which is music, culture, knowledge, numbers, in which he gives his inside perspective of the recording industry, from chart work to album sales to who's coming up as far as who's hot and who's not. He also has a Smoke of Truth, like called the Check Your Ego Door, the podcast, in which he gives his unorthodox view on a world of subjects. But if you are willing to listen to him, then dagnabbit, he's willing to listen to you, because Trace always wants all the smoke. Now, as for yours truly, I do have many podcasts of my own. The first one, of course, is How the Frack We Got Here, every Saturday from 10 a.m. to noon. A little bit later tonight, between 8 to 10, will be the Off Limits podcast, in which we cover any subject. I do mean any and all subjects, just because we want to prove that we'll be able to talk about these subjects in an articulate and professional manner, and also be able to bring civilized debate and convos to any subject to prove that anything can be talked about, as well as to learn anything from it. Of course, after on Sunday between 5 to 7 is my Get Bit podcast, is my Blurred podcast, in which we cover all things video games, sci-fi, anime, comics, and various news and sports. And sports, I mean also wrestling, because it's still real to me. Damn it, I don't have the bit, but I'll leave that from Vaughn. And of course, my newest edition is the Burned Out podcast, every Tuesday from 7 to 9 p.m., in which I tell IT stories from the other side of the phone, sometimes enlightening, sometimes funny, but all the way just entertainment in itself. Now, all these shows can be found under my Facebook page, William Buchanan. They also have their own Facebook and YouTube pages. You simply have to look up How the Frack We Got Here, the Off Limits podcast, Get Bit, that is GITBIT, as well as the Burned Out podcast. Now, I do have to announce this, that as of this after our Get Bit podcast on Sunday, I will be taking a break just for a week. I will be taking a break over the following week, so there will be no podcast after Get Bit this Sunday, at least for a week to give us a little bit of a break. But we'll come right back to it week after next, which will probably put us right around Father's Day, the week after Father's Day, to where we'll begin resuming our podcast then. So this will actually be announced on every one of my podcasts from here on out. Just want to give you guys a heads up. Aside from that, guys, I do want to sit there and say that the scroll above my head is for donations, just to help things as far as better equipment, better lighting, better location. I am still waiting for news on a location. I just cannot drop yet, so until it's confirmed, I will just sit here and hope and cross and pray that it does come through, because I definitely want these podcast to grow. Aside from that, guys, I just want to sit there and say, if you can donate, that's great. If you can't donate, then all I ask that you like, share, and subscribe to the show. Maybe tell somebody about it, because there might be somebody out there that might enjoy this and be able to share along with others. Because like I said, all I'm trying to do is just try to do the news differently. By differently, I mean we are presenting all the facts to you to allow you to make up your own mind. We're not trying to persuade you. We're not trying to guide you or anything of that nature. It's just simply presenting the facts and letting you go from there. And aside from that fact, guys, I will sit there and say before I do wrap this up, thank you, all you essential workers. Thank you, hospital workers, doctors, nurses, doctors' aides, nurses' aides, faculty, orderly, environmental services. You are precious. Also, at the same time, grocery store workers, whether you work in Kroger's, Walmart, or any Whole Foods, or anything that still allows people to go in and shop, that you are risking your lives to make sure that we can still put food on our tables. Again, thank you. And also, at the same time, let me thank you, truckers. Truckers that aren't trying to run over protesters, you guys are welcome. The truckers who are trying to run over protesters, fuck you. Aside from that, guys who are working in UPS, DHL, Amazon, United States Postal Service, any type of freight that is still going down to make sure that we are still have food on our table, lights going on, fuel in our cars, things of that nature. Thank you so much for all that you do. Now, if I were you doctors and nurses right now, I would be talking about, let's talk about getting these student loans wiped, but that's just me. But aside from that, guys, last thing I'll say about how the Frack We Got Here, it's literally about staying informed. It is not about trying to change your mind or persuade you. It's about presenting all the facts to you and hopefully empowering you to do the same, to not accept anything at face value, to go out there, to find out the truth for yourself, and be able to find reputable sources and facts to present to somebody else in order to inspire them to do the same. Because honestly, we do a lot better as a community when we're informed. We do a lot better as a state when we're informed. We do a lot better as a country when we are informed. Because we can make a lot better choices when we're informed than we're not. Because an uninformed country got us Trump, and that's how the Frack We Got Here. I thank you everybody all for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Aside from that, please be safe. Go out only if you need to. Try to stay away from people, and if you feel a little bit sick, just stay home. The only truly way we're ever going to be able to open up fully is that we follow the instructions and be able to go from there. Aside from that, we're just going to keep repeating the same cycle, but I believe it in my heart we can all do it. Have a great weekend, guys. Thank you again for watching. If you're watching this on the playback, feel free to comment. If you like what I did, please let me know. If you didn't like what I did, please let me know. I'm only trying to change the platform to where everybody can enjoy it, interact, and hopefully make it bigger than what it is. But thank you guys for all watching. Have a wonderful weekend.